Bizarre Brain Comics. Hello. Gary here for Bizarre Brain Comics. This is where I like to take a look at the older comics, talk about the characters and creators, and then examine the stories and the art. This time, well, see, yeah, if you followed me for any length of time, you probably know then that I love the giant monster stuff. Big Godzilla and Gamera fan, and like the 60s, 50s and 60s giant monster movies, giant monster stories that Marvel produced. So this is like that, but this is not from Marvel. This is originally from Charlton Comics, and it is Gorgo, a monster from the deep. Drawn by Steve Ditko, who did some of the Marvel monster comics. So let's see what the Big Book of Knowledge has to say about Gorgo. Gorgo. And 1961 science fiction giant monster movie, which was a co-production of the UK, US, and Ireland. And it was a King Brothers production. So Gorgo started out as a movie. And Charlton Comics in 61 did an adaptation of the movie. But then they continued on in a series, a comic book series of Gorgo. See, in the comic book, it's Gorgo, a comic book series based on the movie. It ran from 61 to 65 with 23 issues. The last issue was correction, I said that wrong. The first issue was an adaptation of the film. Thereafter, the title featured original stories of the monster Gorgo and his mother, Ogra. They faced various other monsters and aliens and human threats. Every issue was written by Gill, and Steve Ditko drew 8 issues, and this book reprints those 8 issues. Gorgo was also, from what I understand, this is from Guandanaland Comics that they reprint old stuff. From what I understand, they've also reprinted some of, if not all, of the other Gorgo stories, but these were compiled together just because it's all Steve Ditko. Okay, and the rest were drawn by various other artists from Charlton's stable. And the comics are now in the public domain, while the film is not. But if you've never seen the movie, if you like Godzilla movies and you've never seen Gorgo, because it's a British production, it is available on YouTube to watch for free. It just has commercials in it. And so that's a lot of fun. And by and large, the production quality is better than the old Godzilla movies. But it's still a man in a suit. Or actually, 2 men in 2 suits. But so, let's go take a little look at the destruction being wrought by Gorgo, monster from the deep. Okay, here you can get a better view of the cover of that. And as I said, this is Gondwanaland I always want to say that wrong. Guandanaland Comics, and they reprint um, stuff like this. That's no longer. That is now public domain. That's what I was trying to say. Public domain stories, characters and stories and the like. There was also a British movie that was basically a ripoff of King Kong called Konga. They did a comic adaptation of that, and also had a series of that, much of which was drawn by Steve Ditko at the same time period. Okay, and just in case you didn't know, want to know how these the giant monster, the kaiju genre of movies came about, the way as I understand it anyway. There, others could say other stuff. Is that I've forgotten the year. The early 50s was produced the movie The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, of course, which is a giant prehistoric, fictitious version of prehistoric beast, which comes ashore and wreaks havoc on New York City and stuff like that, with the marvelous special effects genius of Ray Harryhausen. I love Ray Harryhausen's work. Okay, then when the Japanese film industry, they saw how popular that was and thought maybe they can emulate that with their own version of a monster, but they couldn't really afford either the time or the money for the stop motion animation. So when they created Godzilla, they went for the man in a rubber suit, and it's been that ever since. Except for the newer American versions, which are CGI. And then, with the success of the Godzilla movies, American comics, primarily Atlas at that time, later Marvel, followed on with that. Said, well, they're having a lot of success with that, so let's do that. This is one because regular horror comics were few and far between, and the Comics Code had pretty much killed that. So they went with the little tamer giant monster movies, monster character stories. And of course, then British and American productions also copied the Japanese success by doing a few giant monster movies of their own, that were either puppets or men in suits. And some others too. The Koreans made one. I can't remember the name of that one. Anyway, that's what I wanted to give you that little bit of background. Okay, now just because this is big and bulky, I'm not going to go through this particular book. What I do want to show is, okay, here, from 1986, I think it was, A+ Comics, Attack of the Mutant Monsters, which was in the mid-80s, a reprint of two of the Gorgo stories done by Steve Ditko. But for copyright reasons, they changed the name to Kigor. And what I'm going to go through is the second, what was in the third issue of Gorgo. Of course, it says Kigor, but I'm going to change that because it's easier to remember Gorgo for me. And this is a Steve Ditko cover. This was the cover for the actual cover for the second issue. And just give you a little look. Here's it says Kigor. Oh, great splash panel. This is, of course, Gorgo attacking London. This is from the movie, how Gorgo was discovered, and then they had a little. He's captured and going to be put on display like King Kong, but then comes the twist ending. Find out that Gorgo was a baby and Mama was not happy. So here is Ogra. Gorgo's mother wreaking havoc in London, trying to get her baby back. And one very interesting thing about Gorgo, of course, in the stories, it's a series, just like Godzilla, as far as the comics are concerned. But Gorgo and his mother are never the aggressors. They don't just come ashore and start doing like Godzilla and start stomping on Tokyo. Gorgo and mother are just trying to sleep. They are apparently amphibious, and breathe both water and air, and they go down to the depths of the ocean and sleep until somebody disturbs them. And it's usually someone trying to take advantage, wanting to do something with Gorgo or his mother, usually Gorgo because he's smaller and slightly easier to control, as in the story we're going to cover here, that he and Mama's got to come to the rescue. And various other things. They find some other monsters, and some place where dinosaurs still exist. People are always trying to take it. Like in this story, it's a dictator trying to control Gorgo so he can take over his neighbors and stuff like that. Here's another great splash page. Monster. See, here it says Kigor, monster of the deep, but he's Gorgo. And this is just splash page and indicating something that's happening in the story here. We see this Latin America on a Latin American island is a dictator. His name is I forgot. I don't see if it says his first name, but his house name is Astro, and he's a dictator. He is a thinly disguised parody of Fidel Castro. And he wants to conquer his neighbors. He has a bunch of scientists here. And he hears about the rampage that Gorgo and his mother had in London, and in the second issue, which is in New York. And he wants to control that monster. So here, some great, look at that, some great Steve Ditko art there. It's great drawing with the boat and the swells of the sea, the birds, everything. Very, very, very nice. And his characters, all the bad guys, they look like bad guys. And these two bad guys, they look a lot alike. But this is Astro, and this is the scientist. I've forgotten his name. And they're trying to find Gorgo and his mother in the depths. At the end of the second story, they were exposed to some kind of nerve gas, and they still got away, and then just went back down to sleep and sleep it off. Well, he's got an idea. He's got this giant electric prod, and he zaps Gorgo and wakes him up. You know, what the heck? And then they have a plan to capture him, and they do. Zaps him until he's unconscious. Then they haul him back to the island, to the home. And Dr. Valzo, that's his name. And he's got time to train Gorgo. And because he's a baby, he's easier to control. Even though he's just a little fella compared to Gorgo. And he does some training because if he disobeys, he starts zapping him with that prod. So gets him to learn and do a few things, and then they approach Astro's neighbor, and who was also a dictator, and then tells him to give up or face the consequences. So Gorgo is wreaking havoc under their control. He says, "Okay, I surrender. Just let me get my loot and get the hell out of here," and which he does. Then Astro takes over. They stop Gorgo, and he is standing there as intimidation for everyone, for no one to rebel. But then he kind of goes hog wild again. He just gets angry. He says, "They're not going to control me anymore." And this, or so he thinks. He maintains control. Maintains control. but then Dr. Valzo overthrew Astro. So he's in control because he can control the monster. No reason for him to be a henchman. You can see there's Gorgo even bowing to him. It looks a lot like the monster from the movie. Did a really good job, I think, portraying the monster. And he's in control. And then they're menacing the another neighboring country. And then Gorgo just gets pissed and says, I'm not going to obey you anymore, basically. And then he goes on a rampage and he attacks them. I mean, there's a big body count in this story, in these stories. But it's not malicious, because everyone is, I mean, they're the innocents who die are as a consequence of someone else's actions. While Gorgo is going crazy, he just wants to be free. And he tramples that army, then starts chasing Dr. Valzo. He gets to a boat, to the yacht, and the captain says, the crew have taken off, and I am too. So that leaves the doctor by himself on the boat. And then Gorgo is chasing him, and forgot that Gorgo is amphibious. He's at home, just as much at home in the water as he is on land. And he's chasing. You can see, that's a good view there, an underwater view. And comes up, yeah, like that 45 is going to have any effect on Gorgo. And crushes the boat, and then just when looks like he's about to kill the old man, he turns away, showing that Gorgo is more humane than these dictators. Because now he's the helpless victim, and he's not going to kill somebody just to be killing them. And I presume because he's out there in that ocean several miles from the land, he's probably going to drown anyway. But he didn't get chomped by Gorgo. Then Gorgo gets back to his mother and back for their nap, and that is that story there of Gorgo. That is, an original story written by Joe Gill. Now, I do want to show something here. That, as I said, initially, you can see there, Gorgo is depicted a lot, really looking a lot like he did the monster in the movies. But as the issues progressed, the artists interpreted both Ditko and the others. He gradually became slender, more svelte, less bulky looking, and the figure itself is a little more human looking, even to the very last issue. Here he's up against a dinosaur, but you can see he's more slender and not so bulky, and the torso looks almost human. Yeah, there's the both of them. Arms are longer, legs are longer, more slender. The torso is more slender, more human-like. It's just a natural evolution. Although I like the earlier, bulkier looking look of the monsters. So that is Gorgo, Monster from the Deep. So I hope you enjoyed that. And if you've never heard of Gorgo, you might hunt this volume or other volumes out, read it, or watch the movie. As I said, it's available on YouTube for free. That's where I watched it last time. So thank you for joining me. Please like, share, subscribe. Leave a comment. And remember, even if it's giant rampaging monsters, comics are art.